Greetings and welcome to Monday Morning Coffee. May our God, the God of everything, grant you all grace, peace, and mercy throughout this entire week. This week we are once again continuing our study on the fruit of the Spirit, and we are moving on to the next attribute, which is faithfulness. Now, if you have not seen the rest of the series, go to the description box below. There'll be a link to the entire playlist. Start there and it will bring you to this video where you can catch up. You'll want to see all of them before you get to this one. We're going to begin where we do every week with Galatians 5 verses 22 and 23, our key scripture for the entire series. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. Now, the Greek word for faithfulness is pistis, which is a word that is actually interesting because in the Greek language, there's not a different word for faith or faithfulness. It's the same word. In English, we have a different word for each of those. Now, this word actually means a dedication or belief to something, particularly a dedication or belief to God or Jesus. So it's a pretty powerful word. Now, we don't really have to wonder what this means with regards to the New Testament. In fact, we have a very plain definition. If we will go to Hebrews chapter 11, we will see what Paul says of this word. We're going to begin in verse number 1. Now, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. For by it the men of old gained approval. By faith we understand the worlds were prepared by the word of God, so that what is seen was not made out of things which are visible. I really like something I read in the Jewish New Testament commentary, where it states that by trusting we understand, or as the 11th century Christian theologian Anselm put it, credo ut intelligam, or I believe in order to understand. Those who refuse to take the tiny step necessary to trust God cannot understand the most basic truths. The benevolent consequences of faith are not only emotional, but affect the realm of the mind. Now, the whole concept of faith or faithfulness, as it is talked about in the Bible, is actually contrary to everything we are taught. In fact, it's not uncommon for us to hear phrases just the opposite of that, such as prove it, or I'll believe it when I see it. Now, Hebrews chapter 11 is often called the faith chapter, or the Hall of Faith, or the one I like best is the Faith Hall of Fame. And within that chapter, we have examples of the people who we look up to, those who had faith and listened to God and did what they were instructed. The names that are listed there are Abel, Enoch, Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Rahab, Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and the prophets. But the interesting thing about this is, despite all those stories being fantastic, I think the most powerful verses out of this chapter begin in verse 33, a summary of it all. So let's go there. Hebrews 11:33. Who by faith conquered kingdoms, performed acts of righteousness, obtained promises, shut the mouths of lions, quenched the power of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, from weakness were made strong, became mighty in war, put foreign armies to flight. Women received back the dead by resurrection, and others were tortured, not accepting their release, so that they might obtain a better resurrection. And others experienced mockings and scourgings, yes, also chains and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawn in two, they were tempted, they were put to death by the sword. They were sent about in sheepskins, in goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, ill-treated, men of whom the world was not worthy, wandering in deserts and mountains and caves and holes in the ground. All of these, having gained approval through their faith, did not receive what was promised, because God had provided something better for us, so that apart from us they would not be made perfect. Did you hear that? Did you hear what was read there? All of those things were examples of mighty faith, but the last two verses are perhaps the most powerful of all. Let me read them again. And all of these, having gained approval through their faith, did not receive what was promised, because God had provided something better for us, so that apart from us they would not be made perfect. In other words, they didn't receive what was promised. What was promised was saved. And because of us, because of what happens with us, their promises will happen. And that is Christ. That is the promise of Jesus. Now, we're just now getting started in this topic of faith and faithfulness. And I hope you're going to join us again next week as we dive into this topic even further. Between now and then, remember, the world is your mission field. Now go out and reflect Jesus into it.